Hey, tonight we explore the forgotten world of ancient Mesopotamia, where civilization first took root along the fertile banks of the Tigris and Euphrates. The year is 2350 BCE, and you are about to embark on the most prestigious intellectual journey available to someone of your station, becoming a scribe. The rising sun bathes the ziggurat in golden light as you walk the narrow streets of Uruk, sandals slapping against sun-baked earth, your heart pounding with equal measures of fear and excitement. Your father has sacrificed much for this opportunity, and today you cross the threshold into the Edaba, the tablet house, where you will learn to master the sacred art of cuneiform. If you're enjoying this peaceful moment, please like, share, and subscribe. What time is it where you are? Which city are you watching from tonight? Dim your lights, turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and settle in. Let your thoughts wander gently into the past. You stand before the mud brick building, its entrance shadowed and cool compared to the already warming morning air. Your 12-year-old shoulders bear the weight of a small linen sack containing your meager possessions. A copper stylus given by your father, a small knife of bronze, and a carefully wrapped bundle of dates and barley cakes your mother prepared before dawn. The wooden door creaks open, and an older boy ushers you inside with barely a glance. The tablet house is both smaller and larger than you imagined. The central courtyard opens to the sky, where several boys sit cross-legged on reed mats, hunched over clay tablets. The sound reaches you first, the soft scratching of reed styluses against moist clay, punctuated by occasional murmurs and the distant call of birds. The scent is overwhelming. Damp earth, sweat, the faint bitterness of ink made from charcoal and gum arabic, and the ever-present river smell that permeates all of Uruk. A figure emerges from a side room, the Ummiyah, master scribe and teacher. His beard is oiled and curled in the fashion of learned men, his eyes sharp but not unkind. He wears the simple linen kilt of a professional, belted at the waist, his upper body bare except for an amulet of lapis lazuli that catches the light. His arms are sinewy yet soft, the arms of a man who works with his mind rather than brute. Strength. "You are the tanner's son?" he asks, his voice surprisingly gentle. You nod, unable to find words, your throat dry with nervousness. "You have good hands," he observes, taking your palm and turning it over, examining the shape of your fingers. But hands mean nothing without discipline. Here, you will either become something rare and valuable, or you will fail and return to your father's trade. The choice is made daily, with every tablet you complete. He leads you to an empty spot in the courtyard, where a ball of prepared clay and a wooden tablet coated with wax await. You sink down onto the reed mat, feeling its rough texture against your bare legs. The clay is cool in your hands as you lift it. Not the rough river clay you've played with, but fine textured material carefully cleaned of impurities and mixed to the perfect consistency. Watch the others, the Ummiyah instructs, before moving away to correct another student's work. Begin by forming your tablet. You observe the older boys, some perhaps 16 or 17, their hands moving with practiced confidence as they flatten clay into rectangles or shape them into cushions. The youngest apprentices, closer to your own age, struggle more, their tablets uneven, their frustration evident in furrowed brows and bitten lips. With trembling hands, You begin to work the clay, feeling it warm beneath your touch. The sensation is at once familiar and new. This is not play, but the beginning of your life's purpose. You flatten the clay between your palms, trying to achieve an even thickness, then smooth the surface with a flat piece of wood another boy silently hands to you. Your first tablet is roughly the size of your outstretched hand, its surface far from perfect but serviceable. An older apprentice approaches with a reed stylus, demonstrating without words how to hold it at the proper angle, pressing the triangular end into the clay to form the characteristic wedge shapes that give cuneiform. Wedge-shaped, its name. The first mark you make is wobbly, too deep. The second is better. By the fifth, you begin to understand how the tool becomes an extension of your hand. Morning stretches into midday, and your back aches from hunching. Your first tablet is covered, with clumsy attempts at simple signs, the symbol for an, sky, ki, earth, ud, day. The older boy who has been silently guiding you finally speaks. I am Enlil Nasir. You will learn or you will leave. There is no middle path here. As the sun reaches its zenith, a bell sounds and the courtyard comes alive with movement. Boys set aside their tablets and styluses, stretching cramped muscles and rubbing eyes tired from concentration. A middle-aged woman enters carrying a large pot, followed by two girls with baskets. The simple meal is distributed, a ladle of barley porridge flavored with onions, a piece of flat bread, a handful of dates for those whose families have paid the full tuition. You receive half a portion, reflecting your father's partial payment supplemented by his promise to provide leather for the temple. You eat slowly, savoring the food, observing the hierarchy among the students. The oldest sit in a tight group, occasionally laughing, their conversations peppered with references to texts and calculations beyond your understanding. The younger boys cluster according to time served in the tablet house, with the newest like yourself sitting alone or on the fringes. There is no cruelty here, merely the natural order of knowledge and experience. During the meal, you notice a boy perhaps 2 years your senior, watching you from across the courtyard. His clothing is finer than most, his bearing confident. When your eyes meet, he doesn't look away but nods slightly, an acknowledgement rather than a greeting. Later, you will learn he is Shusin, son of a temple administrator, destined for a position recording grain deliveries and calculating offerings due to the goddess Inanna, patroness of Uruk. The afternoon brings new challenges. Your tablet is taken away, the clay recycled for another apprentice. You are given a new ball and instructed to form another practice tablet. This time, the Umir himself comes to stand behind you, watching as your fingers work the clay. The tablet is the foundation, he says to the group at large, though his eyes remain on your work. A poor tablet makes for poor writing, and poor writing leads to misunderstanding. In misunderstanding lies the destruction of trust, trade, and memory itself. He reaches down suddenly, taking your nearly finished tablet and turning it over in his hands. This edge is uneven, the surface slopes. What you create must be perfect before you ever press stylus to clay. Begin again. You feel heat rise to your face as he crushes your work back into a ball and returns it to your hands. Around you, the scratching of styluses continues without pause, no one looking up at your humiliation. This, you realize, is the first real lesson. Perfection matters, and sentiment does not. 3 more attempts finally produce a tablet that meets with a curt nod of approval. By now your fingers are sore, your shoulders tense, your lower back a knot of pain. The light begins to soften as afternoon advances, throwing longer shadows across the courtyard. The youngest apprentices, those who do not yet live in the tablet house, begin to gather their belongings. You, the Umiya says, pointing to you and 2 other new boys, will remain. Your families have arranged for your housing here. He gestures to Enlil Nasir. Show them their sleeping place and explain the morning duties. You follow Enlil Nasir into a long, narrow room off the courtyard. Reed mats line the floor with thin wool blankets folded neatly at one end of each. Small clay lamps sit in niches, carved into the walls. There are no windows, only narrow slits near the ceiling that will allow smoke to escape when the lamps are lit. You sleep here. Enlil Nasir indicates 3 mats at the end of the row, furthest from the door. Morning duties begin before sunrise. You will prepare clay for the day's lessons, fetch water from the well in the central square, and clean the courtyard. After 5 years, if you remain, you will have fewer physical duties. Until then, you serve with your body as well as your mind. You place your small sack beside one of the mats, claiming it as your own. The reality of your new life settles heavily upon you. The familiar comfort of home replaced by this austere room. The sounds of your family by the breathing of strangers. The smells of your mother's cooking by the musty odor of old clay and lamp oil. As evening approaches, older students light the lamps, creating islands of warm light in the growing darkness. A simple supper is served. More barley bread, dried fish, and watered beer that tastes of dates and makes your head feel slightly too light for your body. The Umiya joins the meal, sitting on a low wooden stool while the rest remain cross-legged, on the ground. He eats the same food, but receives a larger portion and a cup of undiluted beer. After the meal, to your surprise, the mood lightens. One of the older boys produces a small harp and begins to play a gentle melody. Another sings a hymn to Nisaba, goddess of writing and learning. The music flows through the courtyard, carried on the cool evening breeze, and for the first time, since arriving, you feel something other than anxiety, a sense of belonging to something ancient and meaningful. The stars emerge above the open courtyard, the same stars your ancestors have studied for thousands of years, mapping their movements, finding patterns, creating stories. Tomorrow, you will begin to learn the symbols that allow those observations to be recorded, the miraculous transformation of thought into mark, of ephemeral knowledge into permanent record. Despite your exhaustion, excitement flickers within you. As you lay on your mat later, the hard ground beneath the thin padding, listening to the unfamiliar breathing of the boys around you, you think of your father's words that morning. Once, only kings knew the secrets of writing. Now, you will hold that power in your hands. You flex your sore fingers in the darkness, imagining them covered in the clay dust that will become as much a part of you as your own skin. sleep comes fitfully, dreams interwoven with waking anxieties. Once, you startle awake to find tears on your cheeks. A child's longing for home quickly suppressed. No one must see this weakness. In the dim light of a single remaining lamp, you wipe your face and resettle, forcing your breathing to slow, willing yourself toward the oblivion of sleep. Morning arrives with disorienting suddenness. A hand on your shoulder, shaking roughly. Up, Enlil Nasir commands. Water duties. Outside, the stars still shine, though the eastern horizon shows the first hint of grey. Your body protests as you rise, muscles stiff from the unaccustomed posture of yesterday's work and the unyielding, sleeping surface. You and the other new apprentices follow Enlil Nasir to the central well, each carrying 2 empty water jars. The city is quiet, but not silent. Bakers already work at their ovens, the smell of fresh bread making your empty stomach clench. A temple guard passes, his spear glinting in the torchlight. He nods to Enlil Nasir, recognizing the tablet house, apprentices by their distinctive cropped hair and simple tunics. The well rope is rough against your palms as you lower and raise the bucket, filling your jars with cool water that tastes faintly of minerals. By the time you return to the tablet house, the weight of the full jars has your arms trembling. You make 3 such trips before Enlil Nasir is satisfied with the supply. Next comes the clay preparation, mixing dried clay with water from the river, working it with your feet in a shallow pit until it reaches the proper consistency, then cleaning it of impurities by hand. This, you learn, is why scribes are valuable. Every step of their training, from the humblest preparation to the most complex calculations, is performed by their own hands. Unlike nobles who command others to serve them, scribes know intimately every aspect of their craft. When the other apprentices begin to arrive, you have already been working for 2 hours. Your tunic is splattered with clay, your hands raw from the abrasive material, yet there is satisfaction in seeing the perfectly prepared balls of clay, ready for the day's lessons. The Ummiyah appears and inspects your work, breaking open one of the clay balls to check its consistency. Acceptable, he pronounces, the closest thing to praise you have yet received. Clean yourselves and join the morning lesson. Days blend into one another, forming a rhythm of work and study that becomes your new normal. Each morning begins in darkness with physical labor. Each day continues with endless repetition of cuneiform signs, first simple pictographs, then more abstract symbols. You learn to write your name, to count and calculate using the sexagesimal system based on units of 60, to form the standardized phrases used in temple records and commercial transactions. The discipline is harsh. Mistakes earn swift punishment, a sharp rap across the knuckles with a wooden rod, extra hours of practice while others rest, public recitation of complex texts with humiliation, the price of error. Yet there is no malice in this strictness, only the understanding that in a world where writing serves kings, temples and merchants, precision matters more than comfort. Gradually, your hands strengthen, developing calluses where the stylus rests. Your eyes learn to distinguish the subtle differences between similar signs. Your mind expands to accommodate not only the hundreds of symbols, but their multiple meanings, for cuneiform is not a simple alphabet, but a complex system where a single sign might represent a sound, a word, or even a concept. Seasons pass. The flooding of the rivers comes and goes. Religious festivals mark the passage of time, the sacred marriage of Inanna, the planting celebrations, the harvest thanksgiving. Your first year in the tablet house passes, then your second. You grow taller, your voice deepens, your confidence grows. Some boys leave, unable to master the demanding curriculum or called back to family trades. Others arrive, looking as lost and frightened as you once did. By your third year, you have progressed from simple exercises to copying actual texts. Hymns to the gods, lists of kings, collections of proverbs, mathematical problems. You learn not just to write, but to think in new ways, to organize knowledge, to question and analyze. The world expands beyond the mud brick walls of Uruk as you copy tales of distant lands, accounts of battles, records of trade with mountains, where lapis lazuli is mined, and forests where cedars grow tall as 10 men. In your fourth year, you experience your first real taste of the scribe's power. The Umayyad selects you and 3 other advanced students to accompany him to the temple, where you will assist in recording the grain offerings brought for the spring festival. You don your best tunic, clean but patched, and follow him through streets you have not walked in years. So complete has your immersion in the tablet house been. The great temple complex of Inanna rises before you, its whitewashed walls gleaming in the morning sun. Priests in elaborate garments move purposefully through the outer courtyards. The smell of incense mingles with the aroma of roasting meat, offerings to the goddess that will later feed her servants. You feel small yet significant as the Umayyad leads you through a side entrance and into a long, narrow room where merchants and farmers already wait with their tribute. You are given a prepared tablet and assigned to record offerings of barley. The first farmer approaches, nervous in the temple setting. He tells you his name, his village, the amount of grain he brings. Your stylus moves with practiced precision, recording each detail. When you read it back to him, his eyes widen with something like awe, his words captured and made permanent by your hand. "It is correct," he says, pressing his fingernail into the clay beside your writing as his mark of approval. Throughout the day, you fill tablet after tablet. Some who come are wealthy landowners, confident and sometimes condescending. Others are humble farmers, bringing modest offerings with disproportionate reverence. To all, you present the same face of calm efficiency, your writing clear and standardized, your calculations swift and accurate. This, you realize, is what it means to be a scribe, to stand at the intersection of all levels of society, beholden to none except the truth of your records. By your 5th year, you have mastered the basic curriculum. Now, the specialization begins, as the Umayyad assesses each advanced student's particular talents. Some are directed toward mathematical texts, others toward literature or religious writings. You show a particular aptitude for clarity and diplomatic phrasing, which draws the Umayyad's attention. You will focus on administrative and legal documents, he tells you one evening, reviewing your copy of a complex land transfer agreement. Your hand is steady, your phrasing precise. These are valuable skills in the palace and administrative centers. His words fill you with quiet pride. From the frightened boy who entered the tablet house, you have transformed into a skilled young E. Man with prospects beyond what your father could have imagined. When you visit home on rare festival days, your family looks at you differently, not just as their son, but as someone set apart, marked by education and opportunity. Your sixth and final year at the E-Dubber brings specialized training in the language and format of official correspondence, property records, and judicial decisions. You learn to draft contracts that leave no room for misinterpretation, to record court proceedings with impartial precision, to phrase diplomatic messages with subtle nuances that convey respect while maintaining position. The day of your final examination arrives with the spring, exactly 6 years after you first entered the tablet house. You and 4 other students who began together face a panel of assessors. Your Umiya, a temple administrator, and a royal scribe sent from the king's court. Each of you must demonstrate mastery across multiple areas, writing from dictation, copying a complex text, drafting an original document, performing calculations, and answering questions on literature, history, and religious practice. The examination lasts from sunrise until late afternoon. Your fingers cramp, your back aches, your mind races. Yet there is a flow to your work now, a confidence born of thousands of hours of practice. When you finally present your tablets for review, you know you have done well. 3 days later, the results are announced. Of the 5 who tested, 4 have passed. You rank second, with particular commendation for your administrative writing. The royal scribe, a thin man with keen eyes, approaches you afterward. There is need for a junior scribe in the governor's household, he says without preamble. The position offers room, board, and a silver payment each month. You would assist the chief scribe with correspondence and record keeping. He pauses, studying your face. It is a good placement for someone of your background. That night, your final one in the tablet house, you lie awake listening to the familiar sounds, the soft breathing of sleeping boys, the distant call of night birds, the occasional shout from the city streets. Your body bears the marks of your journey, calloused fingers, a slight stoop to your shoulders, eyes that sometimes blur after hours of detailed work. Your mind carries even more, thousands of cuneiform signs, mathematical formulas, literary passages, legal phrasings. You think of the boy who entered this place, carrying a small sack and large fears. That boy could not have imagined becoming what you are now, a trained scribe, ready to enter service in the governor's household, to wield the power of writing in a world where knowledge and its recording remain the province of very few. Tomorrow, you will walk a different path. Your stylus will press into clay to record matters of significance, decisions affecting trade, justice, governance. Your eyes will read messages from distant cities. Your mind will help shape the written record of your time and place. The clay beneath your fingers will connect you to both power and responsibility, to a tradition stretching back to the very birth of writing itself. As sleep finally comes, you dream not of the past, but of the future, your hands steadily forming, the wedge-shaped marks that will preserve the words of the important, the agreements of the wealthy, the transactions of merchants, and perhaps sometimes the wisdom of the ages. The heat shimmers over the temple complex as you approach the massive ziggurat that dominates the city of Nippur. Clay tablets rest heavy in your satchel, their weight a familiar comfort against your hip as you climb the wide steps toward your new position. The sacred precinct of Enlil, god of air and king of the gods, awaits you. Sacred Impressions, the temple scribe of Nippur. You approach the imposing temple complex of Enlil with a mixture of reverence and professional pride. After years of training and service in smaller shrines, you have been called to Nippur, the spiritual heart of Mesopotamia. The massive ziggurat rises before you, its sun-baked bricks glowing amber in the morning light. Each step upward brings you closer to your new position as a temple scribe, a keeper of sacred knowledge in the house of the King of Gods. The air smells of incense, sweet cedar, and pungent myrrh burning in bronze censers at the temple entrance. Beneath that ritual scent lies the earthy foundation of Nippur itself. River silt, clay, the faint mineral tang of groundwater that sustains this city in the midst of an increasingly arid landscape. Your sandaled feet make no sound on the polished stone path as you approach the scribe's entrance. A modest doorway on the eastern side of the temple complex, away from the grand processional route used by priests and nobles. At 30 years of age, your body carries the marks of your profession. Slightly stooped shoulders from years of hunching over tablets, the characteristic callus on your right middle finger where the stylus rests, eyes that sometimes struggle in dim light after decades of detailed work. Your linen garment is of good quality, but deliberately modest, befitting your status as a learned man who serves rather than commands. Around your neck hangs a small cylinder seal of hematite, carved with your professional insignia, a kneeling scribe before the symbol of Nisaba, goddess of writing. You pause at the threshold, feeling the weight of history press upon you. Nippur has stood for more than 1,000 years already, its temple archives containing tablets from the earliest days of writing. Here, the first epic poems were recorded, the first star charts preserved, the first legal codes established. And now you, born to a merchant family in distant Sippa, will add your marks to this unbroken chain of knowledge. A young acolyte notices your hesitation and approaches. "You are the new temple scribe?" he asks, his head slightly bowed in deference to your status. When you confirm with a nod, relief crosses his features. The chief priest has been awaiting your arrival. The spring equinox rituals begin tomorrow, and the previous scribe's illness has left much unrecorded. He leads you through a labyrinth of corridors, each turn revealing more of the temple's grandeur. Unlike the austere exterior, these inner passages display wealth and artistic sophistication. Walls painted with ritual scenes, niches holding votive statues with wide staring eyes, doorways framed with imported cedar. The smells change too. Less incense here, more of clay tablets, papyrus, and the distinctive scent of the special oils used to clean and preserve important texts. Finally, you reach a spacious room illuminated by high windows that allow indirect light to flood the space without direct sun that could damage delicate tablets. Your breath catches. This is the temple scriptorium, workspace of Nippur's scribal elite. A dozen low tables are arranged in careful rows, each with its own clay lamp for work during darker hours. Along the walls, wooden shelves hold hundreds of tablets arranged by subject and date. their edges labeled with cuneiform notations. In the center of the room stands a large table where an elderly man examines a tablet, his silver hair gleaming in the soft light. He looks up at your entrance, keen eyes assessing you without warmth or hostility, purely professional evaluation. "I am Ur-Ninurta, Chief Temple Scribe," he says, his voice surprisingly strong for his apparent age. "You come well recommended by the scribal school in Sipar. We shall see if their assessment matches my standards." Without waiting for response, he gestures you toward the tablet he's examining. "Tell me what you observe here." You approach carefully, aware that this is your first test. The tablet is clearly ancient, its clay darkened with age, its signs from an earlier period of writing. You recognize it as a hymn to Enlil from perhaps 500 years earlier. Without touching it, you know better than to handle such a valuable text without invitation. You lean close, examining the script. It's a royal hymn to Enlil, composed during the reign of Ur-Nammu, you say, recognizing the distinctive style and flourishes of that period. The script shows northern influence in the formation of the divine determinatives. There appears to be water damage on the lower left corner, and a crack developing along this edge. I would recommend careful cleaning and storage in a sealed jar to prevent further deterioration. Ur-Ninurta's expression doesn't change, but something in his posture relaxes slightly. "Acceptable observation," he says, which you understand is high praise from such a source. Your duties here will encompass 4 areas: ritual documentation, administrative recording, archival management, and occasional diplomatic correspondence. You will be assigned quarters in the scribe's residence and receive the standard allotment of barley, oil, wool, and silver. Questions? You ask about the immediate priorities given the approaching equinox festival. This practical focus seems to meet with approval as Ur-Ninurta begins outlining the urgent tasks, preparing tablets for the ritual recitations, documenting offerings brought by nobles and commoners alike, recording astronomical observations that will be made during the ceremony. The day proceeds in a flurry of activity. You are shown your workspace, a corner table near a window, positioned junior to the senior scribes but superior to the apprentices who occupy the dimmer interior spaces. You unpack your tools, a carefully wrapped set of reed styluses with tips of various shapes and sizes, a smoothing stone for preparing tablet surfaces, a fine knife for corrections, and your personal reference tablet containing frequently used signs and measurements. By mid-afternoon, you are deep in work, preparing a series of tablets for tomorrow's rituals. Each must be perfect, shaped to the ideal thickness, surface immaculately smooth, edges precisely squared. These are not everyday records, but sacred texts that will be part of ceremonies honoring the God who keeps the universe in order. Any flaw would be not merely unprofessional, but potentially sacrilegious. As you work, you observe the rhythm of the scriptorium. Senior scribes consult with priests who come and go, their long robes rustling, their headdresses marking their divine service. Apprentices, boys between 8 and 16, fetch materials, prepare clay, and practice simple texts under the sharp eyes of junior instructors. Messengers arrive with reports from outlying temples and estates, each communication carefully logged and sorted. There is minimal conversation, only the soft sounds of styluses pressing into clay. the occasional murmur of consultation, the shuffle of sandaled feet on stone floors. This is a place of concentrated mental effort, where the ephemeral, spoken words, observed events, counted goods, becomes fixed in clay, transformed into permanent record. Late afternoon brings your first significant interaction with Nippur's religious hierarchy. A tall priest enters the scriptorium, his elaborate headdress marking him as an priest of high rank. The room subtly shifts. Scribes sit straighter, apprentices lower their eyes. Even Ur-Ninurta rises in deference. The lunar tables, the priest says without greeting or introduction. The chief astronomer has noted an anomaly in the rising time. The calculations must be verified before tomorrow's ritual. Ur-Ninurta turns and, to your surprise, gestures toward you. Our new arrival was noted for astronomical calculation in Sipar. Perhaps a fresh perspective would be valuable. Suddenly, all eyes are upon you. This is no small matter. The precise timing of astronomical events is crucial to temple ritual, believed to connect earthly ceremonies with cosmic movements. An error could invalidate an entire festival, angering the gods and casting doubt on the temple's authority. The priest studies you for a moment, then nods curtly. Bring him to the observation chamber after sunset. The astronomer will provide the previous calculations. After he departs, the scriptorium returns to its quiet industry, but you feel the weight of this unexpected responsibility. Astronomical calculation is indeed a specialty you cultivated in Sipar, where the sun god Shamash was particularly venerated. But to have your skills tested so publicly, so soon after arrival, raises both opportunity and risk. As darkness falls, an apprentice leads you through the temple complex to a tower on its western edge. Stone stairs spiral upward, opening onto a flat roof equipped with astronomical instruments, a water clock marking time with steady drips, a set of graduated rods for measuring celestial angles, clay tablets inscribed with star charts and calculations from previous observations. The night air is cool and still, the sky a vast canopy of stars undimmed by city lights. The astronomer, an older man with a deeply lined face, doesn't look up from his work as you approach. The moon rose 2 finger widths north of the expected position, he says without introduction. Previous calculations suggest this should not occur until 3 days hence. Verify the error in my reasoning or observation. He pushes a set of tablets toward you, densely packed with numbers in the sexagesimal system, notations of star positions, and complex calculations tracing the moon's path across the seasonal sky. You settle on a low stool, examining the tablets, by the light of an oil lamp carefully shielded to preserve night vision. For the next 2 hours, you review the calculations, occasionally glancing skyward to verify star positions against the written record. The work is intricate, demanding both mathematical precision and spatial understanding. Gradually, you identify the discrepancy, not an error in calculation, but an incomplete adjustment for the gradual shift in celestial positioning that occurs over generations. The baseline star chart requires correction, you explain, showing the astronomer your working tablet. The fixed stars have shifted approximately 1 degree over the 40 years since these reference points were established. When adjusted, The moon's position matches prediction. The astronomer examines your calculations in silence, his finger tracing each step of your reasoning. Finally, he nods. Sound methodology. The ritual timing stands as originally determined. He looks up, studying your face for the first time. You were trained in Sippar? Yes, in the temple of Shamash. It shows their astronomical tradition remains superior. This seems to be his version of compliment. You will assist with observations during tomorrow's ceremony. When you return to the scribe's residence, a long, narrow building adjacent to the temple proper, you find your assigned quarters, a small but private room with a reed mat bed, a clay lamp, a low table for personal work, and a wooden chest for storage. The walls are whitewashed mud brick, the floor packed earth covered with woven reed matting. Simple, but far more comfortable than the shared dormitories of your apprentice days. Sleep comes with difficulty, despite your physical and mental exhaustion. The newness of your surroundings, the weight of tomorrow's responsibilities, and the lingering excitement of successful astronomical work keep your mind active long after your body has surrendered to the mat. When you finally drift off, your dreams are filled with cuneiform signs, rearranging themselves into star patterns against a clay-colored sky. Morning arrives with the sound of bronze gongs calling the temple precinct to wakefulness. You rise quickly, washing with water from a ceramic basin, dressing in your formal scribal garments, a long linen tunic with decorative borders marking your professional status. Today, you will not merely observe but participate in one of the most significant religious ceremonies in all Mesopotamia. The temple courtyard is already bustling when you arrive. Priests in ceremonial dress move purposefully between ritual stations. Smoke rises from the great altar where preliminary offerings burn. Temple singers rehearse hymns that have remained unchanged for centuries. And everywhere there is wealth on display. Gold vessels for libations, lapis lazuli decorations on ritual implements, imported cedar burning incensers, expensive purple-dyed wool in the garments of high officials. Your role today combines the practical and the sacred. Positioned near the main altar with prepared tablets, you will record each significant offering, ritual action, and astronomical observation as they occur. These tablets will later become both administrative record, who gave what, which rituals were performed, and religious document, preserving the ceremony for theological study and future repetition. The high priest appears atop the ziggurat, arms raised to the brightening sky. His voice carries across the courtyard, reciting the opening invocation in ancient Sumerian, a language now used only for religious purposes, its pronunciation carefully preserved through scribal tradition. You recognize the hymn from your studies, feeling a connection to countless scribes before you who recorded and transmitted these same words. As the sun climbs higher, the ceremony intensifies. Noble families arrive with substantial offerings, cattle, silver, imported luxuries. Common people bring more modest gifts, clay figurines, small measures of grain, handcrafted textiles. All must be recorded, their value assessed, their disposition noted. Your stylus moves with practiced efficiency, each tablet filling with precise accounts. Midday brings the ceremony's climax, a ritual enactment of Enlil's mythic organization of the cosmos. The high priest, now embodying the god himself, accepts offerings from representatives of every social class and profession. When he approaches the scribe's delegation, Ur-Ninurta steps forward with a beautifully crafted tablet containing all the year's significant celestial observations, the scribe's special offering to the god of air and authority. Through the afternoon, ritual gives way to celebration. Music fills the courtyard as professional musicians perform on lyres, harps, and drums. Portions of sacrificial meat are distributed according to strict hierarchical protocol, with temple personnel receiving their designated shares. Sweet date wine flows for the elite, while ordinary beer serves the common celebrants. Your work continues unabated, recording notable occurrences, documenting unusual offerings, noting any deviations from prescribed ritual that might require purification ceremonies. As evening approaches, you join the astronomer on the observation platform to record the exact moment when the first stars appear, marking the precise length of this equinox day. Only as the celebration winds down do you realize you've been working continuously for more than 12 hours, sustained by nothing but a quick morning meal and occasional sips of water. Your back aches, your fingers are stiff, your eyes burn from concentration. Yet there is deep satisfaction in the row of perfectly executed tablets now drying on shelves in the scriptorium, your first contribution to Nipper's vast repository of knowledge. Days blend into weeks, and weeks into months as you settle into the temple's rhythm. Each day brings different duties, sometimes administrative, recording grain distributions or worker payments, sometimes scholarly, copying ancient texts for preservation or study, sometimes religious, documenting rituals, or preparing ceremonial inscriptions. The variety suits your wide-ranging intellect, allowing you to employ different aspects of your training. You develop working relationships with various temple officials, the astronomer who values your computational skills, the ritual director who appreciates your meticulous attention to ceremonial details, the quartermaster who respects your accurate inventory records. Even Ur-Ninurta gradually warms, occasionally inviting you to share evening meals where he recounts scribal traditions dating back to the earliest days of Nippur. During one such meal, several months into your service, he reveals an unexpected aspect of your position. "Tomorrow," he says while breaking bread, "you will accompany me to the sealed archive. It is time you were introduced to the temple's most guarded texts." The sealed archive, mentioned only in whispers among junior scribes, rumored to contain texts too powerful, controversial, or sacred for general access. You maintain a composed exterior, but excitement courses through you at this mark of acceptance and trust. Morning finds you following Ur-Ninurta through unfamiliar corridors deep beneath the temple complex. The air grows cooler, drier, conditions ideal for clay tablet preservation. Finally, you reach a heavy wooden door reinforced with bronze bands. 2 guards stand watch, acknowledging Ur-Ninurta with respectful nods. He produces a complex key, and the massive door swings open with surprising smoothness. Inside, the chamber is larger than you expected, illuminated by several carefully placed oil lamps. The walls are lined with ceramic storage jars, each sealed and labeled with cuneiform identifying its contents. In the center stands a large table of imported hardwood, its surface covered with soft cloth to protect tablets during examination. This, Ur-Ninurta says with quiet reverence, is the true heart of Nippur. Here we keep texts that cannot be widely shared, either because their knowledge is reserved for the initiated, or because they represent traditions that conflict with current practice but are preserved for scholarly completeness. He moves to a section of shelving and carefully selects a sealed jar. Today, you will help me catalogue the Adapa texts, myths concerning the first sage, who possessed divine knowledge but remained mortal. The variants contain theological perspectives no longer openly taught, but preserved for historical understanding. As he breaks the clay seal and carefully extracts the tablets, you realize the profound privilege of this moment. Few scribes ever access such restricted material. The texts before you represent ancient understanding of humanity's relationship with the divine. Questions of knowledge, mortality, and cosmic order explored through mythic narrative. The work is painstaking, examining each tablet for condition, verifying its contents against the catalogue, preparing new archival containers and seals. Throughout the process, Ur-Ninurta shares insights into the theological implications of various textual variants, revealing a depth of scholarship that explains his position as chief scribe. Why show me these now? You finally ask, as you complete the careful repacking of the final tablet. He considers you for a long moment before answering. The temple has received communication from the royal court in Babylon. They request a scribe, skilled in both administrative recording and theological texts, someone to serve as both practical recorder and scholarly resource. I have recommended you for this position. The statement lands with weight. A court position in Babylon, the rising power in Mesopotamia, whose ambitious king Hammurabi is extending influence through both military conquest and cultural prestige. Such a role would represent significant advancement, greater status, higher compensation. Yet it would also mean leaving Nippur with its unparalleled scholarly tradition and spiritual significance. This is unexpected. You manage mind racing with implications. Consider carefully, Ur-Ninurta advises. Court service offers opportunity and risk in equal measure. You would have access to power and influence beyond what any temple can provide. But you would serve mortal authority rather than divine tradition. Political requirements sometimes conflict with scholarly integrity. He reseals the storage jar with practice movements. You have a month to decide. The royal messenger returns to Babylon then, and would escort you if you accept. The following weeks pass in a state of internal conflict. During the day, you perform your duties with customary precision, recording temple activities, copying texts, calculating astronomical positions. But your nights are restless, filled with weighing options and imagining futures. Babylon represents ambition, proximity to royal power, broader influence, greater material reward. Nippur represents tradition, scholarly depth, spiritual connection, the weight of history. Both paths have merit. Both involve sacrifice. You seek subtle counsel from trusted colleagues. The astronomer speaks of Babylon's growing intellectual community, its gathering of scholars from across Mesopotamia. A senior, priest warns of court politics and the compromises demanded by royal service, Ur-Ninurta remains carefully neutral, offering neither encouragement nor discouragement. Your decision must be your own. One evening, unable to settle your thoughts, you climb to the astronomical observation platform. The night is clear, the B stars brilliant above Nippur's ancient silhouette. You recall your first night here, proving your worth through careful calculation. In less than a year, you have established yourself, gained respect, accessed restricted knowledge, yet the pull of new opportunity remains strong. A soft footfall announces you're not alone. Turning, you find one of the eldest priests, a man rarely seen outside ritual contexts, said to have served Enlil for over 60 years. He doesn't speak, but stands beside you, gazing at the stars. The heavens remain constant, he finally says, yet our perception of them changes. What appears fixed is actually in constant, subtle motion. He turns to study your face. I understand you contemplate Babylon. You acknowledge this with a nod, surprised at his awareness of your situation. I was offered a similar choice in my youth, he continues. The court of Ur-Nammu sought ritual expertise. I declined. A slight smile crosses his weathered face. I have never known whether that was wisdom or fear disguised as principle. Perhaps both. How did you decide? You ask. I listen to the silence between heartbeats. His gaze returns to the stars. In that space, stripped of ambition and anxiety, I heard the path that would allow me to serve with integrity. He departs as quietly as he arrived, leaving you with enigmatic counsel that nonetheless resonates. In the days that follow, you find yourself paying attention to those moments between conscious thoughts, the quiet spaces where deeper knowing might reside. 3 days before the messenger's departure, you request an audience with Ur-Ninurta. In his private study, a small room lined with his personal collection of tablets, you deliver your decision. I am honored by the court's interest, you begin formally. But my work here remains unfinished. With your permission, I wish to continue serving Nippur's temple. Ur-Ninurta's expression reveals nothing, but he studies you with heightened intensity. The court offers power and wealth beyond what we can provide. Yes, you acknowledge, but Nippur offers something I value more: continuity with the source of our knowledge. Here, I can serve truth before authority. Something shifts in the old scribe's posture, a relaxation, perhaps even relief. I will inform the messenger. He pauses, then adds, there are aspects of temple knowledge you have not yet encountered. Your decision opens paths that would otherwise have remained closed. The following day brings confirmation of these cryptic words. After morning duties, Ur-Ninurta leads you not to the sealed archive, but to an unmarked door in a quiet corner of the temple complex. Unlike the guarded archive, this entrance bears no obvious security, protected instead by obscurity, and what you sense must be powerful religious prohibition. Inside, a narrow staircase descends farther than seems possible, torches illuminating your way into earth that grows increasingly cool and dry. At the bottom, a chamber slightly smaller than the sealed archive contains not storage jars, but open shelving where tablets rest in carefully organized rows. Most striking is their appearance, not the familiar buff or reddish clay of standard tablets, but a distinctive black material that gleams slightly in the torchlight. The obsidian tablets, Ur-Ninurta says quietly, are most ancient texts, copied from originals dating to the earliest days of Sumerian civilization. The material is difficult to work but nearly indestructible. Each tablet takes a master scribe a full year to complete. You approach with appropriate reverence, noticing that the signs are archaic forms of cuneiform, some so old they still closely resemble the pictographs from which the writing system evolved. The content, from what little you can decipher at first glance, appears to be cosmological. Descriptions of celestial movements, divine functions, and cosmic organization that predate current religious understanding. Why show me this now, you ask, echoing your question from the sealed archive visit. Because you chose knowledge over advancement. Ur-Ninurta runs a finger delicately along a tablet's edge. These texts represent our oldest theological traditions. Some contradict modern practice. Others contain knowledge considered too profound for general dissemination. They are entrusted only to those who have demonstrated commitment to preservation over personal gain. He turns to face you directly. I am advancing in years. Soon, someone must take responsibility for this collection, studying it, preserving it, and eventually selecting the next worthy successor. Your decision regarding Babylon suggests you might be suitable for this path. The implication staggers. You, not just access to these extraordinary texts, but eventual guardianship of Nippur's most sacred scribal tradition. It represents a different kind of advancement than court service, less visible, less materially rewarded, but perhaps more meaningful to the preservation of Mesopotamian knowledge. The study begins slowly, Ur-Ninurta continues. One morning each week, you will join me here to learn the archaic signs and specialized vocabulary. As your understanding grows, so will your access. This is the work of decades, not months. In that moment, any lingering doubt about declining the Babylon position vanishes. The path before you now offers intellectual and spiritual depth that no court position could match. Connection to the very roots of written knowledge in human civilization. The following years transform both your understanding and your position within Nippur's hierarchy. Weekly sessions with the obsidian tablets expand your linguistic knowledge, theological understanding, and historical perspective. You learn writing forms so ancient they were already considered archaic when the famous Gilgamesh epic was first recorded. You encounter cosmic explanations that blend observation with mythology in ways both scientifically sophisticated and poetically profound. Your regular temple duties continue alongside this specialized education. You record festivals, administrative decisions, astronomical observations. You train younger scribes, gradually taking on more of Ur-Ninurta's educational responsibilities. You correspond with scholars in other cities, establishing yourself as a respected voice in theological interpretation and textual preservation. On the 5th anniversary of your arrival in Nippur, Ur-Ninurta formally recognizes you as his designated successor. The ceremony is small but significant, attended by the high priest, key temple officials, and the most senior scribes. You are presented with a special stylus made of imported silver, its handle carved with symbols representing the unbroken chain of scribal knowledge. More meaningful than the object itself is what it represents: acceptance into the innermost circle of Mesopotamian intellectual tradition. That evening, in the quiet of your quarters, now a more spacious room befitting your elevated status, you reflect on the path that brought you here. From merchant's son to temple apprentice, from junior scribe to guardian in training of civilization's most ancient written knowledge, your fingers trace the silver stylus, feeling the carved symbols that connect you to generations of scribes, stretching back to writing's invention. Tomorrow will bring new tablets to inscribe, ancient texts to study, apprentices to guide. Your life has become fully integrated with Nippur's endless cycle of preservation and transmission. In choosing this path, you have become part of something that began before you and will continue long after. The patient, precise recording of human experience and understanding, pressed into clay, one careful mark at a time. As night deepens, you prepare a small tablet, not for official record but personal reflection. In precise cuneiform, you record not events but feelings, gratitude for the knowledge entrusted to you, commitment to its preservation, wonder at the continuity of which you are now part. When finished, you place it in a small niche beside your bed, a private offering to Nisaba, goddess of writing, and to all the unknown scribes whose dedicated work created the tradition you now serve. Sleep comes easily tonight, your dreams filled, not with ambition or doubt, but with ancient signs and ageless wisdom, the rhythmic pressing of stylus into clay, and the quiet satisfaction of purpose fulfilled. The royal palace of Babylon rises before you, its blue-glazed tiles gleaming in the morning sun. Your sandals cross the threshold into a world of political intrigue and power, where your stylus will record the words that shape an empire. Your heart quickens as the royal herald announces your name. Words of kings, royal scribe in the court of Hammurabi. The great cedar doors of the royal audience chamber swing open before you, releasing a wash of incense-laden air and the murmur of dozens of conversations suddenly fallen silent. You stand perfectly still at the threshold, conscious of every detail of your appearance. The precisely draped formal robe of fine linen with its blue-dyed borders marking scribal status. The freshly trimmed beard oiled and combed to court standard. The polished copper stylus case hanging from your belt. Even your posture communicates your position. Straight-backed, but with head slightly bowed, confident yet deferential, as befits one who serves power directly without being powerful oneself. The royal herald strikes his staff against the floor 3 times, the sound echoing through the vast chamber. Approaches the royal presence, Shamash Nasir, chief recording scribe to His Majesty Hammurabi, king of Babylon, king of Sumer and Akkad, king of the 4 quarters of the world. Your given name sounds strange in this formal pronunciation, a reminder of how far you have traveled from your origins as a temple scribe's son from a modest quarter of Sippar. 15 years of steady advancement through increasingly prestigious and scribal positions have led to this moment. Your first day as chief recording scribe in the court of Hammurabi, the most powerful ruler Mesopotamia has seen in generations. You walk forward across polished stone floors, past columns carved with protective spirits, between rows of officials and petitioners who study you with expressions ranging from curiosity to calculation to barely concealed resentment. The air is heavy with competing scents. The sweet cedar incense burning in golden censers. The musky perfumes of nobles. The oil used to condition the leather scrolls carried by foreign delegates. Despite the chamber's size, the press of bodies makes it warm, and you feel a trickle of sweat down your back beneath the formal robes. At the far end of the hall, elevated on a dais of imported marble, sits the royal throne, a massive seat of cedar wood overlaid with gold and lapis lazuli. Upon it sits a man of middle years whose presence commands the room more through intensity than physical stature. Hammurabi of Babylon, 30th year of his reign, architect of an expanding empire, and most significantly for your role, creator of the most comprehensive legal code the world has yet seen. The king's eyes, dark, intelligent, measuring, fix upon you as you approach. Neither his expression nor his posture reveals anything of his thoughts. The ceremonial beard that reaches nearly to his waist is elaborately curled and oiled. His robes shimmer with gold thread and jeweled embroidery. His crown bears the symbols of divine favor from Marduk, patron deity of Babylon. Yet despite these trappings, what strikes you most is the unmistakable sharpness of the mind behind the royal facade. You stop at the prescribed distance, perform the court prostration with practiced grace, forehead touching the cool stone briefly, before you rise to a kneeling position and speak the formal response to your introduction. This humble servant presents himself at the king's command, ready in mind, hand, and loyalty. Hammurabi studies you for several long moments before, speaking Shamash Nasir. Your reputation precedes you. 3 temple archives improved under your supervision. Diplomatic correspondence that avoided war with Lhasa. Records of unprecedented clarity during the canal expansion project. His voice is unexpectedly melodic, measured in cadence. Now you will record the words that will outlast stone. He gestures to your right, where an unoccupied position awaits. A low table of polished wood bearing prepared clay tablets, a water bowl for keeping them workable, and a cushioned seat that will allow you to write comfortably throughout long audiences. The previous chief scribe station, now yours. Today you observe, tomorrow you record. The king's attention has already shifted to the waiting petitioners, a clear dismissal. You move smoothly to the designated position, settling yourself with minimal disruption as the court proceedings resume. A senior scribe, bald, with the distinctive ear piercing of long royal service, leans slightly toward you. "I am Sinidinum," he whispers. Second scribe, "I will guide you through protocols." His tone is professional rather than friendly, but not hostile. Watch how the king indicates which exchanges are to be recorded formally and which merely noted in summary. The day unfolds in a blur of petitions, reports, and diplomatic exchanges. Provincial governors detail harvest yields and tax collections. Military officers report on frontier conditions. Priests seek confirmation of temple appointments. Foreign envoys present gifts and carefully worded messages from their rulers. Through it all, Hammurabi remains alert and engaged, asking precise questions that often reveal he knows more about the matters at hand than those presenting them. You observe the subtle hand signals the king uses to indicate recording priorities. To the current recording scribe, a raised index finger for verbatim transcription, a flat palm for summary only, a dismissive wave for matters requiring no record at all. You note how he occasionally glances toward the scribal station after significant pronouncements, verifying his words are being captured exactly. By mid-afternoon, the formal audience concludes. The king rises, all present immediately prostrate themselves, and exits through a private door behind the throne, accompanied only by his closest advisors and personal guards. As the court disperses, Sin Idanam leads you through a side corridor toward the scribal offices. The king's memory is faultless, he says as you walk. He will recall his exact words from today's audience and expect them reflected perfectly in tomorrow's reading. Errors are noted. The slight hesitation speaks volumes about the consequences of such mistakes. The scribal complex occupies a significant portion of the palace's administrative wing, a series of well-lit rooms where dozens of scribes work at different specialized tasks. Some copy texts onto fine clay for permanent records. Others translate correspondence into various languages. Still others calculate tax assessments or supply requirements. The walls are lined with wooden shelves holding thousands of clay tablets organized by subject and date, each shelf labeled in precise cuneiform. Sinidinam shows you to a private office near the complex's entrance, a small but well-appointed room with a work table positioned to catch optimal light from a high window. A sleeping chamber connects to it, furnished simply but comfortably with a reed mat bed, wooden chest, and washing stand. Court scribes live within the palace, he explains. The king may require your services at any hour. You're permitted to leave the palace on official rest days unless specifically instructed otherwise. He pauses, then adds with careful neutrality, the previous chief scribe left for health reasons. His successor was initially to be selected from among us. Your appointment from outside was unexpected. The implication is clear. You have been placed above scribes who expected advancement, creating potential resentment. Before you can respond, Sin Idanam continues more formally. Court dinner is served at sunset in the scribal hall. Morning audience begins with the second hour. You should arrive early to prepare your materials. With a correct but minimal bow, he withdraws. Alone in your new quarters, you take stock of both the physical space and your situation. The office contains the finest scribal equipment you've ever used. Styluses of various materials including precious copper and silver, clay of perfect consistency, imported papyrus for certain special documents, even rare purple ink derived from sea creatures for marking important passages. The physical comfort and professional resources far exceed what any temple or provincial administration could provide. Yet the human landscape seems considerably more challenging. You've been brought in above experienced court scribes, clearly, by the king's personal decision. Such royal favor can vanish as quickly as it appears. Your position grants significant access to sensitive information and royal thinking, making you both valuable and potentially dangerous in the complex political ecosystem of the court. That evening's dinner in the scribal hall confirms your assessment. Approximately 30 scribes of various ranks dine together at long tables, the seating arrangement clearly reflecting hierarchy. As chief recording scribe, you are seated at the head of the primary table. a position that feels exposed rather than honored as conversations diminish when you approach. The food is excellent. Roasted meats, fresh bread, imported fruits, wine of good quality. But the atmosphere remains cool, despite your attempts at appropriate collegial conversation. Only one person makes genuine effort to engage with you, a female scribe seated nearby, unusual both for her gender and for the distinctive blue-black tattoos marking her as a formerly foreign specialist. "I am Siduri," she introduces herself. "Correspondent scribe for the Western provinces. You'll find the court has clear boundaries between specialized scribal roles. Some resent crossover or outsiders." She speaks softly, but without apparent concern about being overheard. "And you?" you ask cautiously. A slight smile crosses her face. "I remain an outsider myself despite 5 years' service. My position exists because I speak languages few Babylonians master. Usefulness provides its own protection." She studies you with intelligent eyes, as your position will, if you navigate carefully. After dinner, you return to your quarters to prepare for tomorrow's duties. You lay out materials for the morning audience, select styluses appropriate for formal recording, and review court, procedural documents left for your orientation. Despite physical fatigue from the tense day, sleep comes uneasily as your mind processes the complex dynamics into which you've been thrust. Dawn arrives with palace servants bringing fresh water, bread and date wine for breaking your fast. You dress with care in formal scribal attire and arrive at the audience chamber well before the appointed hour. The space feels different in the morning light, somehow both more intimate and more imposing without the press of petitioners. Guards stand at attention by every entrance, their polished bronze spearheads gleaming. Court officials begin to filter in, arranging documents and consulting in hushed tones. You prepare your station methodically, laying out tablets in order of anticipated use, checking the consistency of the clay, arranging styluses for easy access. From the corner of your eye, you notice the king's personal advisor, an elderly man named Era Imiti, whose extensive knowledge of royal affairs is legendary, watching your preparations with clinical interest. When Hammurabi enters, the room transforms. All present prostrate themselves as the king takes his seat. Without preamble, he begins the day's business, a review of judicial decisions from provincial governors requiring royal confirmation. He looks directly at you. Record these fully, with particular attention to precedent citations. You begin your work, stylus moving with practiced precision across the clay surface. Years of training and experience guide your hand as you capture complex legal terminology, judgment rationales, and the king's occasional interventions to modify decisions. The work requires complete concentration, not just recording words but organizing them coherently, using standardized legal terminology, ensuring that references to earlier cases are noted with proper citations. By mid-morning, your first tablets are filled. As a junior scribe collects them for drying and storage, you prepare fresh ones without interrupting your attention to the ongoing proceedings. Hammurabi occasionally glances in your direction, his expression revealing nothing of his assessment of your performance. The morning session concludes with an unexpected development, the arrival of a messenger bearing news from the northern frontier. The man is dust-covered and obviously exhausted from hard travel, his official dispatch pouch sealed with the mark of a military commander. The court falls silent as he delivers his report. A neighboring kingdom has moved armed forces to the border region, possibly preparing for incursion into Babylonian territory. Hammurabi's demeanor changes subtly, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a barely perceptible tensing of posture. He dismisses all but his closest advisors and military officials, but points directly at you. Chief Scribe remains. Full record required. The strategic discussion that follows reveals aspects of royal governance rarely witnessed by outsiders. Maps are brought forth, troop strengths assessed, supply lines analyzed. Hammurabi listens more than he speaks, asking occasional pointed questions that reveal sophisticated military understanding. When he finally announces his decision to reinforce the border but avoid provocative action while dispatching diplomatic envoys, the clarity and confidence of his command is striking. Throughout this sensitive exchange, you record with the same disciplined precision, though your mind registers the enormous significance of being trusted with such information on your first official day. As the military council concludes and officials depart to implement the king's orders, Hammurabi calls you forward, your tablets. He extends his hand, an unusual request. Normally records would be processed through formal channels before reaching the king. You present your work with appropriate deference. Hammurabi studies the clay tablets, reading your careful cuneiform with expert ease, a reminder that Mesopotamian kings are themselves literate and educated. After several minutes of silence, he returns the tablets, clear, precise, without embellishment or omission. His assessment is matter-of-fact rather than complimentary. This evening, you will attend me in the private study. There are matters requiring special documentation. The remainder of the day passes in routine court business, tax assessments, property disputes, appointments to provincial offices. Throughout, you maintain focused attention, carefully recording according to the king's signals. By late afternoon, when the formal audience concludes, you have filled nearly 20 tablets with densely packed cuneiform. You return briefly to your quarters to refresh yourself before the evening summons. Your arms ache from the day's continuous writing, your mind from constant concentration. Yet beneath the physical fatigue runs a current of satisfaction. Your first day appears successful, your skills recognized by the most powerful ruler in the region. As twilight falls, a royal steward arrives to escort you to the king's private study, a part of the palace few ever enter. The path leads through increasingly restricted areas, past multiple guard positions, until you reach an unassuming door of imported cedar wood. Inside, the space surprises you with its relative simplicity, scholarly rather than opulent. Shelves line the walls, holding hundreds of clay tablets organized by subject. A large map table occupies the center, its surface showing the known world from the upper sea to the lower sea, with Babylon at its heart. Several oil lamps cast warm light over the scene. Hammurabi sits at a writing desk, studying a tablet. He wears simpler robes than during public audiences, and his beard is bound in a practical fashion that suggests he is working rather than performing. He looks up as you enter. Shamash Nasir, prepare to record. He gestures to a second desk positioned across from his own. For the next several hours, you witness the king's private workings, reviewing reports from spies in neighboring kingdoms, drafting preliminary versions of laws being considered for his famous code, dictating personal assessments of officials serving in distant provinces. The content is extraordinarily sensitive, the kind of information that shapes empire and history. Throughout, Hammurabi's mind moves with remarkable clarity between disparate subjects, his memory for details seemingly limitless. Near midnight, after dictating a particularly complex legal principle concerning water rights during drought, he pauses. "You were a temple scribe before entering royal service." "Yes, Divine Majesty. I served in the temple of Shamash in Sippar, then the temple of Marduk here in Babylon." He nods slightly. Religious training provides valuable perspective on governance. The gods establish order through law. Kings maintain it through the same means. He studies you thoughtfully. "My predecessors ruled primarily through force. Necessary, but insufficient. True empire requires consistent application of principles across diverse territories. This requires words, precise, clear, distributed, widely." He rises and moves to a sealed clay jar on a special shelf. Breaking the seal, he carefully extracts a tablet larger and finer than standard recording tablets. "The introduction to my law code, still in development. Read it, and then we will discuss potential refinements." The tablet he places before you contains some of the most eloquent formal language you have encountered. A royal preamble declaring Hammurabi's divine mandate to establish justice, protect the weak, and create an ordered society. The rhetoric skillfully balances religious authority, practical governance, and personal charisma. You read with professional appreciation for its craftsmanship. "Your impression?" the king asks when you finish. You consider carefully before responding. This appears to be a test of both your literary judgment and your court wisdom. The language is elevated and appropriate to divine sanction. You begin cautiously. The structure effectively establishes both the king's authority and his obligations. If I might venture an observation, the introduction emphasizes justice, more than mercy. Both are royal virtues. Hammurabi's expression reveals nothing, but he nods slightly. An astute reading. The final version must balance severity with compassion, while maintaining absolute clarity of expectation. He takes back the tablet. "You will assist with these revisions over the coming months. My law code must outlast my reign, perhaps all reigns. The words must be perfect." This unexpected level of involvement in the king's most significant legacy, project, the law code that will define his rule for posterity, signals trust far beyond normal scribal duties. You recognize both the honor and the danger in such proximity to power. In the months that follow, you settle into a demanding rhythm. Days are filled with court recordings, administrative documentation, and diplomatic correspondence. Several evenings each week, you join the king in his private study to work on refining the law code. An intellectual challenge that draws on all your scribal training and literary sensitivity. The law code itself proves monumental in scope. 282. Legal provisions covering everything from capital crimes to agricultural boundary disputes, family law to military service obligations. Behind the technical legal language lies Hammurabi's vision of an ordered society, where justice is standardized rather than arbitrary. where even the poorest citizen can know the rules governing behavior. Your particular responsibility becomes crafting the formal language linking related provisions, ensuring terminological consistency, and occasionally suggesting refined phrasings that clarify intent without altering substance. The king proves surprisingly receptive to such input, though always making final decisions himself. Words matter as much as intent, he remarks during one late-night revision session. A law understood differently than intended is worse than no law at all. Clarity prevents future conflict. As you work closely with the king, your position within the court hierarchy solidifies. Initial resentment from other scribes gradually transforms into professional respect. Synedinum becomes a reliable colleague, Siduri an occasional confidant. You develop working relationships with key officials who recognize your influence on royal documentation and seek your guidance in framing their reports to maximize favorable reception. Your quarters expand to include a proper office where you supervise junior scribes in organizing the vast archive of royal pronouncements, legal decisions, and administrative records. Your diet improves with regular invitations to dine with middle-ranking officials. Your clothing reflects your status, still modest compared to nobles, but made of finer materials than common scribes could afford. Yet proximity to power carries constant risk. You witness the sudden disappearance of officials who fail or displease the king. You record edicts that crush rebellious provinces with brutal efficiency. You transcribe interrogation reports from the king's spies that expose plots real and imagined. The same royal attention that elevates you could destroy you with equal speed. One winter evening in your third year of service, you are summoned unexpectedly to the king's private study. You arrive to find Hammurabi alone, studying a map with unusual intensity. Without looking up, he speaks. What I tell you now does not exist until I command it recorded officially. Understood. You bow in acknowledgement, recognizing a moment of particular significance. Mari has betrayed our alliance. The king's voice remains measured despite the gravity of his statement. Mari, a powerful kingdom to the northwest and nominal Babylonian ally, represents a critical strategic partner in Hammurabi's careful balance of regional powers. Their king Zimri-Lim corresponds secretly with our enemies, promising support against Babylon in exchange for territorial concessions. He finally looks up, his eyes hard. We strike within the month. Full military mobilization begins tomorrow, disguised as routine training exercises. No official documentation until forces are positioned. You will prepare the formal declaration of war for release when I command, but it remains unknown to all except us until that moment. The weight of this confidence is enormous. Knowledge of planned military action represents the most sensitive state secret possible, something that could change the fate of kingdoms if leaked prematurely. That Hammurabi entrusts you with such information before his generals and ministers says more about your position than any formal title. There is risk in this knowledge, the king continues, studying your reaction. But rulership requires trusted instruments. You have proven yourself such. Over the following weeks, you craft the formal declaration in absolute secrecy, working on wax tablets that can be instantly erased rather than clay that might be discovered. The document must balance righteous anger with legal justification. presenting Hammurabi's military action as both necessary and divinely sanctioned. Each phrase is carefully calibrated to maximize internal support while minimizing external condemnation. When the attack finally comes, it achieves complete surprise. Mari falls within weeks, its defenses unprepared for Babylon's full military might. You stand beside the throne as Hammurabi receives news of victory, your carefully crafted declaration now distributed throughout the kingdom and to foreign courts. The king acknowledges your role with the slightest of nods. The only recognition possible in the public setting, but meaningful nonetheless. The fall of Mari marks a turning point in Hammurabi's reign, transforming Babylon from a strong regional power to the dominant empire in Mesopotamia. It also marks a turning point in your career, as the king increasingly relies on your skills, not just for recording decisions, but helping to shape their presentation. The greatest project, the Law Code, nears completion in your 5th year at court. After countless revisions and refinements, Hammurabi orders the final version prepared for monumental inscription on stone stelae to be placed in cities throughout his realm. You oversee the specialized team of carvers who will translate the cuneiform from clay to diorite, a stone so hard it will withstand centuries of exposure. The culmination of this project comes on a spring day when the first and largest stele is erected in Babylon's central plaza. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, crowned with a relief showing Hammurabi receiving authority from the sun god Shamash, the monument presents all 282 laws in perfect rows of cuneiform. Below the relief is the introduction you helped refine, eloquent phrases establishing the divine mandate for justice and order. You stand among the court officials during the dedication ceremony, watching citizens gather to marvel at this physical embodiment of royal authority and wisdom. Few can read the text themselves, but all understand its significance. The king's laws, publicly displayed, applicable to all, unchanging and permanent. It represents a profound evolution in governance, from arbitrary rule to codified principle. That evening, during a rare private moment in the palace gardens, Siduri finds you contemplating the day's events. Your words are now stone, she observes, settling beside you on a bench overlooking a small artificial pond. How does immortality feel? You consider her question seriously. Not mine. The king's words, the king's vision. Yet your hand shaped them. I've watched these 5 years as you transformed from recorder to crafter. Her gaze is knowing. There is power in rendering thought as word, especially when that thought rules an empire. She speaks truth you've rarely acknowledged even to yourself. Though never overstepping your role as servant to the crown, you have gradually influenced how royal will is expressed, finding language that clarifies, persuades, and endures. The power is borrowed rather than owned, reflected rather than generated, yet real nonetheless. As your 10th year in royal service approaches, your position seems secure. You have survived court intrigues, military campaigns, periodic royal displeasure. Your quarters now occupy a privileged location near the administrative heart of the palace. A staff of junior scribes supports your work. Your official title has expanded to Chief Recording Scribe and Literary Advisor to the Divine Majesty. Yet security proves illusory. Hammurabi, now in his 40th year of reign, falls ill with fever. Court physicians apply their arts without, Apparent effect. Religious specialists perform elaborate rituals seeking divine intervention. For 7 days, the kingdom holds its breath as its architect and master lies between life and death. On the 8th day, the king rallies, fever-breaking, but the experience has changed him. Though physically weakened, his mind turns with new urgency to questions of legacy and succession. His eldest son, Sin-Muballit, is capable but untested in governance. The empire Hammurabi built remains vulnerable to fracturing without his personal authority. You are summoned to the royal bedchamber, an unprecedented intimacy reflecting the urgency of the moment. Hammurabi sits propped against cushions, visibly thinner, but with eyes as sharp as ever. "I require new documents," he states without greeting. "Instructions for governance after my passing, whenever the gods determine that time. Not laws, but wisdom, how to maintain what I have built." The assignment is monumental, essentially distilling the king's lifetime of political and administrative experience into a form his successor can follow. Over the following months, as Hammurabi gradually recovers strength, you spend countless hours recording his insights on statecraft, how to assess officials' loyalty, when to show mercy versus severity, how to balance military necessity with administrative stability, which foreign powers can be trusted and which must be watched. "These teachings must be clear yet nuanced," the king instructs during one session. "My son understands warfare and ritual observance well enough. It is the space between, where governance happens, that I must illuminate for him." As this work progresses, you notice subtle shifts in court dynamics. Officials increasingly direct attention towards Sin-Muballit, anticipating future power transitions. Some who were steadfastly loyal to Hammurabi begin positioning themselves for continued influence under his successor. The prince himself grows more visible in court proceedings, sometimes offering opinions on matters previously reserved for his father's judgment. Your own position becomes increasingly complex. As keeper of both Hammurabi's formal pronouncements and now his private wisdom, you hold information valuable to all political factions. Approaches come indirectly, casual questions about the king's thinking, suggestions that you might benefit from supportive relationships after the inevitable transition, even veiled warnings about being too closely associated with the current regime. You navigate these dangerous waters with careful neutrality, maintaining absolute loyalty to Hammurabi while avoiding unnecessary antagonism of his potential successors. Your scribal training, with its emphasis on recording rather than creating, preserving rather than altering, provides discipline for this delicate balance. The 12th anniversary of your royal service arrives with an unexpected development. Hammurabi, now physically recovered but increasingly focused on administrative rather than military matters, summons you and Sin-Idinam to his private study. The second scribe's presence at such a meeting is unusual. "I have decided to establish a new royal archive," the king announces without preamble. "Not here in Babylon, where fire or conquest could destroy it, but in a secure location known to few. This archive will preserve the essential documents of my reign, the law code, diplomatic correspondence, administrative systems, and my personal instructions on governance." He looks between you and Sin-Idinam. You two will oversee this project. Select what must be preserved. Create duplicate copies on the finest clay, prepared to endure centuries. Include context and explanation for future readers who may not know our current practices. This is not for my son or even his sons, but for time beyond reckoning. The project consumes the next year of your life. Working in a secluded section of the palace with a small team of the most trusted scribes, you create what amounts to a complete record of Hammurabi's governance system. Each document is executed with unprecedented care, clay purified multiple times, signs formed with perfect precision, tablets fired to nearly ceramic hardness for permanence. Beyond mere copying, you develop explanatory texts that future readers would need. Descriptions of current administrative divisions, glossaries of specialized terminology, chronologies of significant events. This work draws on all your scribal training, plus the intimate knowledge of governance acquired through years at court. Upon completion, the entire collection, nearly 600 tablets, is carefully packed in sealed bitumen-coated cedar boxes for transport to their secret location. Only you, Sin-Idinam, the king, and a small military detachment know the destination. A remote temple complex dedicated to Shamash, far from major cities, where specially constructed underground chambers have been prepared. The journey takes 20 days, traveling by night with the precious cargo constantly guarded. When you finally reach the temple, a modest structure that gives no hint of its new importance, the head priest greets your party with elaborate ritual purification before allowing the archive to enter the sacred precinct. Deep beneath the temple floor, you personally oversee the placement of each box in the prepared chamber. The space has been engineered to remain dry even during seasonal flooding, its walls treated with bitumen for waterproofing, its entrance designed to be nearly invisible when sealed. As the final box is positioned, you experience a profound sense of connection to a future you will never see. Scholars, perhaps centuries hence, who might discover this record of Babylonian achievement. Upon your return to Babylon, you find the court atmosphere noticeably changed. Hammurabi, now visibly aged, appears less frequently at public audiences. Sin-Muballit increasingly handles day-to-day governance under his father's guidance. The transition everyone has anticipated has begun its gradual unfolding. Your own thoughts turn increasingly to what will follow your court service. You have reached middle age, 45 years marked by the grey now threading your beard. You possess considerable wealth from years of royal stipends, enough to establish a comfortable private existence. Yet the question of purpose remains open. After recording the words of kings, what words might you write for yourself? The answer begins to form during a private audience with Hammurabi several months after the archive project's completion. You expect routine matters requiring documentation, but instead find the king in a reflective mood, gazing through an open window toward the great ziggurat of Marduk that dominates Babylon's skyline. I have been reviewing the annals of my predecessors, he says without turning. So few are remembered beyond their conquests. Land taken, enemies subjugated, buildings erected. These form the substance of their records. He finally faces you. I wish to be remembered differently. Your law code ensures that, Divine Majesty, you respond. No ruler before has created such a comprehensive system of justice. He acknowledges this with a slight nod. The code preserves my judgments, but not the reasoning behind them, not the experiences that shaped my understanding of governance. He pauses, seeming to reach a decision. I wish to dictate my recollections, not for public distribution, but for preservation alongside the archive we have established. The story behind the laws, the unseen context of decisions. You will record these. This commission, essentially, the King's Memoirs, represents unprecedented historical documentation. No Mesopotamian ruler has left such a personal record. Certainly not one intended for distant future readers, rather than immediate political effect. Over the following months, in private sessions often lasting late into the night, Hammurabi recounts his life's journey, from young prince witnessing his father's struggles to maintain independence in a region dominated by larger powers, through his early campaigns establishing security, to the gradual development of his governance philosophy. He speaks of influences rarely acknowledged, an encounter with a wise woman in his youth that shaped his views on justice, observations of failed states that informed his administrative structure, even private doubts during difficult military decisions. You record faithfully, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but never directing the narrative. The resulting tablets, which you label the Reflections of Hammurabi, reveal the human mind behind the royal facade, the practical experiences that shaped seemingly abstract legal principles. As this work nears completion, the king falls ill again, this time with greater severity. Court physicians speak in hushed tones about his declining strength. Religious rituals increase in frequency and elaboration. Sin Mubalit now presides over most court functions, with Hammurabi appearing only for the most significant matters. During what proves to be your final private audience, the king is confined to his bed, voice weakened but mind still precise. The reflections are complete, he says after receiving your latest tablets. You have served with exceptional loyalty and skill these 15 years. What would you ask as final reward? The question startles you. Such direct invitation to request royal favor is rare. After a moment's consideration, you respond, permission to establish a scribal school in my home city of Sippar, Divine Majesty. One that would teach not just technical writing, but the principles of clear expression and legal precision I have learned in your service. Hammurabi studies you with those penetrating eyes that seem unchanged despite his physical decline. You seek to create rather than continue serving. Understandable after years recording others' creations. He nods slightly. Granted, with royal endowments sufficient for buildings and initial operation. Train scribes worthy of the standards you have helped establish. 3 months later, Hammurabi of Babylon joins his ancestors in the realm beyond mortal concerns. The funeral ceremonies last 15 days, with representatives from all provinces and many foreign courts paying respect to the ruler who transformed Mesopotamian governance. You record the official proceedings with professional detachment, though the absence of the commanding presence that has defined your professional life leaves an unexpected emptiness. Sin Mubalit ascends the throne with carefully choreographed ceremonies emphasizing continuity with his father's reign. His first official acts reaffirm the law code, and confirm existing officials in their positions. Prudent moves to maintain stability during transition. 6 months into the new reign, you request formal audience with the young king. He receives you with the careful courtesy of one addressing his father's trusted servant rather than his own. When you present your petition for release from royal service to establish the scribal school his father authorized, he grants it without hesitation, perhaps relieved to remove a figure so closely associated with the previous ruler. Your departure from the palace occurs with little ceremony, a contrast to your arrival 15 years earlier. You gather your personal possessions, distribute gifts to junior scribes who have served you well, and make formal farewells to colleagues like Sinidinam and Siduri. The weight of accumulated tablets and scrolls that represent your professional life require 3 donkeys to transport. As you pass through the massive palace gates for the final time as royal scribe, you feel both liberation and disorientation. For 15 years, your identity has been defined by proximity to power, by responsibility for words that shaped an empire. Now you must create new purpose, establish new patterns, find new meaning. The journey to Sippar takes 8 days. Following the well-maintained royal road northward along the Euphrates, with each day's travel, you feel the burden of court protocols and tensions gradually lifting. By the time the familiar walls of your birth city appear on the horizon, you find yourself noticing details long forgotten. The particular quality of light reflecting off canal waters, the distinctive smell of date palms cultivated in this region, the cadence of the local dialect as travelers pass. The Royal Endowment secures an excellent location for your school, a spacious compound near the Temple of Shamash, where you first learned the scribal arts. Over the following months, you oversee construction of classrooms, dormitories, and your own modest residence. You carefully organize your collection of texts, copies of important documents, reference works, teaching materials accumulated during your career. As word spreads of a school established by Hammurabi's former chief scribe, applications arrive from families throughout the region, seeking places for sons, and occasionally daughters, with aptitude for writing. You develop selection criteria that consider not just technical ability, but qualities of character and mind, attention to detail, ethical reasoning, clear thinking, that your court experience taught you were equally essential to responsible scribal service. The school opens with 30 selected students ranging from beginners to those with basic training seeking advancement. Your curriculum extends beyond traditional scribal education, not just how to form signs correctly, but how to organize information coherently, phrase concepts precisely, and maintain ethical standards when recording matters of consequence. 1. Evening. Nearly a year after establishing the school, you sit in the quiet courtyard as sunset paints the walls golden. Students have retired to dormitories, the day's lessons complete. In this rare moment of solitude, you reflect on the journey from temple apprentice to royal scribe to teacher. Your hands, now showing age spots and slight tremors, have recorded the words that built and maintained an empire, preserved a revolutionary legal code, documented the private wisdom of a king historian will remember as great. Those same hands now guide younger ones in forming their first careful signs, correcting their errors, showing them how written words can clarify rather than obscure, unite rather than divide. preserve truth rather than distort it. You reach for a personal tablet, one not for official record or teaching demonstration, but private reflection. Your stylus presses into the smooth clay, forming signs that have been part of you longer than any other aspect of your identity. The greatest power of the scribe lies not in recording what is said, but in preserving what must not be forgotten. Golden dust rises from the caravan path as you adjust your headscarf against the harsh desert wind. The clay tablets in your satchel press against your hip, their weight both physical burden and precious cargo as you journey between ancient cities. As a diplomatic scribe, between kingdoms, journey of a diplomatic scribe, you squint against the harsh morning light as it reflects off the endless sand surrounding you. The caravan stretches before and behind like a great serpent winding through the desert. 26 heavily laden donkeys, 18 merchants of various origins, 12 armed guards, 4 camel-riding guides, and you, the diplomatic scribe, carrier of words between kingdoms. The journey from Babylon to Mari has already consumed 11 days, with at least 4 more ahead before the distant walls of that river city appear on the horizon. Your body has adjusted somewhat to the rhythm of travel, the pre-dawn rising, the careful packing of essential tools, the long hours swaying atop your donkey, the aches that settle into your lower back and thighs by midday. But you never grow accustomed to the dust. It infiltrates everything: your clothing, your hair, the creases of your eyelids, the folds of the leather satchel that contains your most precious possession, the sealed clay tablets bearing official correspondence from your king to the ruler of Mari. At 46, you are neither young enough to find adventure in this hardship, nor old enough to be excused from such demanding service. Your position as diplomatic scribe comes with both prestige and burden. You are trusted with the words that maintain peace between powers, yet must physically carry those words across some of the most inhospitable terrain in the known world. The caravan leader, a weathered Aramean named Dagon Zakir, with skin like tanned leather and eyes perpetually narrowed against sun and sand, calls for the midday rest. The travelers move with practiced efficiency, creating a temporary camp in the meager shade of a rocky outcropping. Water is distributed with careful precision, enough to prevent dangerous thirst, but never enough to satisfy completely. The merchants exchange quiet conversation in a blend of languages, their discussions of prices and markets continuing despite the harsh conditions. You settle apart from the main group, as has become your habit. Your status as royal envoy creates a distance. The merchants respect your authority, but remain wary of anyone so directly connected to power. You unwrap a piece of journey bread and a handful of dates, the standard midday meal that has become monotonous yet necessary fuel for the afternoon's travel. As you eat, you mentally review the mission entrusted to you. The tablets in your satchel contain both official diplomatic communication, formal greetings, responses to previous inquiries, carefully worded expressions of continuing friendship, and the real substance hidden within those pleasantries. Proposed terms for managing water rights along the shared tributary of the Euphrates that has become a point of tension between the kingdoms. Your role extends beyond mere courier. Upon arrival, you will not only deliver the written message, but verbally explain nuances, answer questions, and report the Mari king's reactions back to Babylon. Your thoughts are interrupted by Dagon Zakir, approaching with his characteristic silent tread. "We have reports of Soothe raiders active in the region ahead," he says without preamble, referring to the nomadic tribes known for attacking caravans. "We will adjust our route slightly eastward, closer to the river settlements. It adds a day to the journey but offers greater safety." You nod agreement. Your instructions prioritize successful delivery over speed. "Has word been sent ahead to Mari of our delay?" "A fast rider departed at dawn. They will expect us on the 6th day from now, rather than the 5th. He pauses, studying you with those sun-weathered eyes. "You've made this journey 8 times now. Does it become easier?" The question surprises you. Dagon Zakir rarely engages in personal conversation. "Not easier," you respond after consideration. "More familiar. The discomforts remain the same, but they no longer surprise." He makes a sound that might be a suppressed laugh. "Like marriage." Before you can respond to this unexpected comparison, he moves away to consult with the guides about the route change. The caravan resumes its journey an hour later, now angling slightly eastward, where distant smudges of green mark the scattered farming settlements that cling to the river's edge. Your donkey plods forward with the stolid patience of its kind, requiring little guidance on the well-worn track. This frees your mind to wander across the years of service that have brought you to this dusty path between powers. You were once a temple scribe in Sippar, content with recording offerings and copying religious texts. That life of regular hours and clean surroundings ended when a visiting official from the capital recognized your particular talent for languages and clear expression. Within months, you were transferred to the diplomatic corps in Babylon, a promotion in status that came with unexpected demands on your comfort and safety. Your first diplomatic journey 20 years ago was to Eshnuna, a relatively short and safe trip that nonetheless left you saddle-sore and overwhelmed by the responsibility of representing royal words. Since then, you have carried messages to virtually every significant power in the region, from mountainous Elam in the east to cedar-rich Lebanon in the west, from Assyria in the north to the edges of the great southern desert. Each kingdom has its own protocols, its own court culture that must be navigated with precision. In Elam, messages must be received with specific ritual purifications. In Assyria, the exact order of greeting various officials can create or avoid offense. In Mari, where you now head, the king expects visiting envoys to dine at his table before discussing any official business, a custom that tests your diplomatic skills after days of travel when you are at your least presentable and most exhausted. The afternoon passes in the hypnotic rhythm of travel. The sun arcs westward, its heat gradually diminishing from punishing to merely uncomfortable. The landscape changes subtly as you approach the river valley. More vegetation appears, first as scattered scrub, then as cultivated fields surrounding small mud brick villages. By evening, when the caravan establishes camp, you can smell water on the breeze. The distinctive silty scent of the Euphrates that has nurtured civilization for thousands of years. Camp routines unfold with practiced efficiency. Tents are raised, cooking fires kindled, animals fed and watered from supplies carried for this purpose. The guards establish a perimeter, their vigilance heightened by the earlier reports of raiders. Merchants gather in small groups, sharing, food and quiet conversation as transactions continue even here in the wilderness. You prepare your own simple camp, a small tent, a reed mat for sleeping, a clay lamp filled with precious oil for the evening's work. Though physically tired, you must review your notes on current Mari court officials, refreshing your memory on names, positions, and relationships that will be essential to navigating the diplomatic environment. You also practice the formal Mari, greeting dialect, similar to standard Akkadian, but with distinctive honorifics and ceremonial phrases that must be delivered without error. As darkness falls completely, bringing the welcome cool of desert night, you hear music beginning near the central fire. One of the merchants has produced a small harp, another a drum fashioned from stretched goatskin. The simple melodies carry across the camp, songs of home, of love, of ancient heroes shared across cultural boundaries. For a moment, the divisions between travelers blur as the music creates temporary community. You listen from the entrance of your tent, appreciating the respite from solitude without joining the gathering. Years of diplomatic service have trained you to maintain a careful distance, friendly but never familiar, present but slightly apart. Tomorrow you will become even more isolated as the caravan approaches Mari and your official role takes precedence over the camaraderie of shared journey. Sleep comes fitfully, interrupted by the unfamiliar sounds of wilderness night. Distant animal calls, the shifting of sand in light wind, occasional movements from the guards changing watch. Your dreams, when they finally arrive, mix images of the many courts you have visited, faces of kings and ministers blending together in a confused diplomatic reception that follows no recognizable protocol. Dawn arrives with a brief period of exquisite beauty, the sky painted in shades of amber and rose before the sun emerges to reassert its harsh dominance. The camp dismantles with practiced speed, everyone eager to cover as much distance as possible before midday heat forces another pause. Your own preparations include a ritual check of the diplomatic pouch, confirming the royal seals remain intact, the tablets undamaged by the journey's jostling. The day's travel brings you closer to the river, following irrigation canals that transform the barren landscape into productive fields. Farmers look up briefly from their labor as the caravan passes, their faces expressing the universal wariness of those who work the land toward those who move across it. In their eyes, you see the fundamental division of settled and nomadic peoples that has defined Mesopotamian life for millennia. The constant tension between fields and tents, between those who build permanent structures and those who carry their dwellings with them. By afternoon, smaller pathways begin joining your route, gradually forming a more substantial road that sees increasing traffic. Farmers bringing goods to market, local officials on administrative business, priests traveling between temples. The higher volume of travelers brings both greater safety from raiders and new concerns about ordinary thieves attracted to merchant caravans. As evening approaches, you reach a substantial settlement, not Mari itself, but one of its satellite communities that serve as way stations for travelers. The caravan leader secures space in the town's caravanserai, a walled compound offering basic accommodation for merchants and their animals. The relative luxury of solid walls, a proper well, and even rudimentary bathing facilities feels almost overwhelming after days in the desert. You take full advantage of the opportunity to remove the accumulated dust of travel, scrubbing your skin with rough cloth and precious soap brought specifically for this purpose. Your spare court garments, carefully packed and protected throughout the journey, are shaken out and hung to remove wrinkles. Tomorrow's entry into Mari requires appropriate presentation. You will shift from dusty traveller to royal representative, your appearance becoming part of the message you carry. The settlement offers another welcome change: fresh food. You purchase a hot meal of river fish, barley bread, and stewed lentils from a local cook. The flavors intense after days of travel. Rations. Eating alone in a corner of the caravanserai's courtyard, you observe the social dynamics of the space. Merchants establishing connections with local traders, guides exchanging information about routes and conditions, guards relaxing their vigilance. Slightly within the settlement's protection, an unfamiliar figure enters the courtyard, a man whose clothing and bearing mark him as neither merchant nor local. He scans the gathered travelers with purpose rather than curiosity. When his gaze falls on you, recognition flickers across his features. He approaches directly, offering the formal bow of a court functionary. The honored scribe from Babylon? He inquires in the distinctive Mari dialect. When you confirm with appropriate formality, he continues, I am Ibal Adu, third secretary to the king's chamberlain. I have been dispatched to escort you for the final stage of your journey tomorrow. The king wishes to receive you promptly, upon arrival. This is unexpected. Typically, diplomatic envoys are allowed rest time before court presentation. Has some urgency arisen? You ask carefully. There have been developments regarding the river matter, he responds, using the deliberately vague terminology of diplomatic discourse. Nothing requiring alarm, but the king wishes for timely discussion. His formality softens slightly. I am also instructed to ensure your comfort for tonight. The local governor's house offers better accommodation than this trader's lodge if you wish. You consider briefly, but decline the offer. Moving to official quarters would separate you from the caravan that has provided safe passage and would require court formalities you prefer to postpone until fully rested. Ibaladu accepts your decision without insistence, a good sign regarding Mari's current diplomatic stance. Aggressive hospitality often masks political pressure. After confirming arrangements for morning departure, the Mari official withdraws. His appearance has shifted the atmosphere, reminding you and everyone present of your official status. The merchants who had begun treating you as a fellow traveler now maintain respectful distance. The weight of your diplomatic role, temporarily lightened during the journey, settles firmly back upon your shoulders. Morning brings better rest than the wilderness nights, but also increased tension as your mission's culmination approaches. You dress with care in court attire, a long robe of fine linen with the subtle embroidered border that identifies Babylonian diplomatic service, a carefully wrapped headdress that frames your face according to current court fashion, sandals of dyed leather rather than the practical but crude footwear of travel. When Ibaladu arrives with a small escort of royal guards, the transformation is complete. You mount a horse provided specifically for your ceremonial entry, rather than the humble donkey that has carried you for days. The diplomatic pouch is transferred to a polished leather case more suitable for court presentation. Your caravan companions offer deferential farewells, the shared hardships of the journey already receding into memory. The road to Mari follows the river directly now, passing through increasingly prosperous settlements. Farmers give way to craftspeople, simple homes to more elaborate structures. Traffic thickens as you approach the city, carts laden with goods, people of various classes and occupations, occasional groups of soldiers moving with disciplined purpose. The air carries new scents, cooking food, manufacturing processes, the distinctive aroma of many humans living in close proximity. Then, suddenly, the city itself appears around a bend in the river, Mari, in all its ancient glory. Though smaller than Babylon, it impresses with massive walls, a sprawling palace complex visible on its central rise, and the distinctive stepped profile of its main ziggurat, dedicated to the storm god Adad. Beneath colourful pennants marking official buildings, countless mud brick structures crowd together in a testament to urban density, possible only through complex social organisation and the agricultural surplus of irrigated fields. Your escort leads you toward a secondary gate, rather than the main entrance, a courtesy allowing you to bypass the busiest markets and most crowded streets. This route offers glimpses into residential quarters, where ordinary life continues despite the political machinations that have brought you here. Children playing in narrow alleys, women grinding grain on stone querns, craftspeople practicing. Specialized trades pass through generations. The palace complex announces itself with a transition to stone paving and wider avenues lined with administrative buildings. Guards become more numerous, their armor and weapons displaying the distinctive Mari sunburst emblem. Officials in various grades of ceremonial dress move purposefully between departments. The bureaucratic apparatus of a major kingdom surrounds you, the visible manifestation of the power with which your own king negotiates. At the palace proper, you encounter the first formal checkpoint. Guards verify your identity and purpose, while officials examine the seals on your diplomatic case with careful attention to their integrity. These procedures, nearly identical across all major kingdoms, reflect the universal concern with message authenticity in a world where communication between powers travels slowly and decisions based on it carry enormous consequence. Once cleared, you are escorted through a sequence of increasingly impressive spaces, courtyards with fountains and ornamental plantings, corridors decorated with painted scenes of royal accomplishment, antechambers where officials of increasing rank manage, access to inner chambers. Throughout this carefully choreographed progression, you maintain the composed demeanor expected of a diplomatic representative, attentive but not overly impressed, respectful but not subservient. In a final antechamber, you are met by the king's chief steward, who explains the adjusted protocol for today's audience. His Majesty wishes to receive your message in the small council chamber rather than the formal throne room. Only senior advisors will be present. This represents significant deviation from normal procedure, suggesting the water rights issue has gained importance since your departure from Babylon. Before proceeding further, you are offered refreshment and an opportunity to make final adjustments to your appearance. The brief respite allows you to center your thoughts, reviewing key points of the message you carry, and preparing for various possible reactions. Your role now transcends mere delivery. You must become the living voice of your distant king, embodying his authority while navigating the immediate diplomatic environment. The council chamber proves to be an elegantly appointed room of manageable size. its walls decorated with maps of the kingdom and surrounding territories. 8 men are present, the king, seated in a carved chair slightly elevated above the others, and 7 advisors arranged according to rank and function. You recognize most from previous visits, though 2 faces are new, suggesting recent changes in court personnel that may affect the diplomatic dynamic. King Zimri Lim of Mari presents the same careful balance of authority and courtesy that has characterized his 15-year reign. Now, in his 5th decade, he combines the confidence of established rule with the pragmatism of a monarch whose kingdom lies between greater powers. His greeting follows perfect protocol, neither too warm, which would suggest anxiety for agreement, nor too cool, which would indicate predetermined rejection. Babylon honors us by sending such a distinguished representative. He begins with the traditional formula. We trust your journey was without significant hardship. You respond with equally measured courtesy, acknowledging both the journey's challenges and the excellent reception provided. This ritual exchange establishes the tone for what follows: formal, mutually respectful, attentive to diplomatic forms that have governed relations between civilized kingdoms for centuries. When the preliminaries conclude, you present your diplomatic case, breaking the seals with deliberate ceremony. The tablets are arranged in proper sequence. First, the formal greetings and expressions of continued friendly relations. Then the specific discussion of water allocation along the disputed tributary. Following established practice, you read the message aloud in clear, measured tones, allowing the king and his advisors to both hear and see the official communication. As you proceed through the substantive portions, you observe the subtle reactions around the room. The irrigation minister nods slightly at mention of alternating access periods, a proposal he likely supports. The military commander's expression tightens when border patrol arrangements are detailed. He may see security implications not fully addressed. The king himself maintains perfect diplomatic composure, his reactions hidden behind the mask of royal dignity. When the formal reading concludes, Zimri Lim asks the expected clarifying questions. Does Babylon envision joint oversight of the water allocation schedule or separate but coordinated management? And what mechanisms for dispute resolution are contemplated if seasonal conditions require deviation from the established pattern? These inquiries, specific, practical, focused on implementation, suggest genuine interest in the proposal rather than mere diplomatic delay. You respond with carefully balanced authority, providing the explanations included in your briefing, while noting which points might require further consultation with Babylon. The discussion expands to include input from the king's advisors, each addressing aspects relevant to their domains of responsibility. Throughout, you maintain the careful line between forthright representation of your king's position and the flexibility necessary for successful negotiation. After nearly 2 hours of substantive exchange, the king signals a natural breaking point. We shall consider Babylon's proposal carefully. A written response will be prepared for your return journey. He then shifts smoothly to host. Meanwhile, quarters have been prepared for your comfort during your stay. We would be honored if you would join our table this evening. The invitation is both expected protocol and a positive diplomatic sign. Discussions will continue in the less formal setting of the royal dinner, allowing for more nuanced exchange than official audience permits. You accept with appropriate expressions of gratitude, and the audience concludes with ceremonial exchanges of respect. A palace steward escorts you to your assigned quarters, a comfortable suite in the diplomatic wing, furnished according to your known preferences from previous visits. The space includes a sleeping chamber, a sitting room suitable for receiving visitors, and a small work area with writing materials and good light. Attendants appear with heated water for proper bathing, fresh garments for the evening meal, and light refreshment to sustain you until dinner. Alone at last, you allow yourself a moment of physical relaxation. Shoulders dropping from their diplomatic posture, face releasing its careful control. The journey's fatigue combines with the intense concentration required during the audience, creating profound exhaustion. Yet your work continues. You must now prepare a preliminary report on the audience, recording not just what was said, but the unspoken reactions that will help your king interpret Mari's true position. You arrange writing materials at the small desk, a wooden tablet covered with wax rather than clay, allowing for private notes that can be easily erased before departure. With practiced efficiency, you document the key observations, which advisors seemed supportive or resistant, which aspects of the proposal generated most discussion, how the king's questions revealed his priorities. This analysis, combined with your formal report upon return, will provide crucial context for Babylon's next diplomatic steps. The evening brings the promised royal dinner, not the massive formal banquet held for public diplomatic occasions, but a smaller gathering of the king, key advisors and selected guests. The setting allows for conversation beyond official positions, creating space for the relationship building essential to successful diplomacy. Here, careful consumption of the excellent wine serves diplomatic purpose, enough to demonstrate appreciation and participate in social bonding, never enough to loosen your control or judgment. Seated between the irrigation minister and a senior priest of Adad, the storm god associated with rainfall and therefore relevant to water discussions, you navigate the complex interplay of personal, connection, and representational responsibility. You share appropriate stories from Babylon, cultural anecdotes, non-sensitive news of notable events, observations about shared challenges like unusual weather patterns affecting both kingdoms. In return, you gather valuable insights about Mari's internal dynamics, agricultural conditions, and unstated concerns regarding resource management. The king, presiding with practiced hospitality, occasionally directs questions your way that continue the afternoon's substantive discussion in more hypothetical terms. If seasonal flooding exceeds predictions, how might such arrangements adapt? He asks at one point, ostensibly as casual dinner conversation but actually probing a critical aspect of the proposal. Your response, equally balanced between informality and substance, maintains the delicate diplomatic dance. Over the following 3 days, you settle into the rhythm of diplomatic residency, a carefully structured routine of formal meetings, informal discussions, cultural participation, and private reporting. Each morning brings official exchange with various ministers responsible for aspects of the water rights issue. Each afternoon includes cultural activities that demonstrate appropriate appreciation for Mari's heritage, visiting its famous Temple of Ishtar, observing renowned metalworking techniques, attending poetry recitations in the distinctive Mari literary tradition, Evenings alternate between formal dinners and more private meetings with individual officials where candid exchange becomes possible. Throughout, you maintain constant awareness of your representative role while gathering the nuanced understanding of Mari's position that cannot be captured in formal declarations. On the fourth day, you are summoned to a private audience with Zimri Lim in his personal study rather than an official chamber. This shift to more intimate setting signals approach of substantive conclusion. The king receives you with noticeably less ceremony, indicating readiness for direct communication. Your king's proposal shows wisdom in its fundamental approach. He begins after minimal pleasantries. Alternating access with proportional allocation acknowledges both our needs. However, 3 modifications seem essential from Mari's perspective. He outlines specific adjustments involving seasonal variations, drought provisions, and enforcement mechanisms, changes that alter details while accepting the basic framework. This represents diplomatic success, agreement on principles with negotiation only on implementation. You respond with careful balance. These suggestions merit serious consideration. Some appear immediately compatible with Babylon's interests. Others may require consultation. This formulation acknowledges the constructive proposal while maintaining your king's authority over final terms. By day's end, a tentative agreement takes shape. The original Babylonian proposal modified by mutually acceptable adjustments with certain technical details left for specialist discussion. Court scribes prepare tablets recording both the agreed points and the areas requiring further development. These, along with formal diplomatic correspondence, will constitute your return cargo, the culmination of your mission and foundation for the next stage of interstate relations. Your departure is scheduled with similar attention to diplomatic significance. Not so quick as to suggest eagerness to leave, not so delayed as to imply reluctance to report back. The return journey will follow a similar route with comparable caravan arrangement, though a Mari military escort will accompany you for the first day's travel as a gesture of respect. On your final evening in Mari, a modest farewell ceremony provides opportunity for formal exchange of good wishes and carefully calibrated expressions of optimism regarding the water rights arrangement. The king presents you with appropriate diplomatic gifts, a finely crafted cylinder seal depicting river gods in the distinctive Mari style, several lengths of the city's famous dyed textiles, a small but elegant statuette of a dad suitable for private devotion. These items represent both personal appreciation and official recognition, their value precisely calculated to honor without creating uncomfortable obligation. You reciprocate with gifts brought specifically for this purpose. Specialty. Items from Babylon selected before your departure based on known Mari preferences and diplomatic precedent. The exchange completes the formal relationship aspect of your mission, complementing the substantive agreement with appropriate cultural connection. Dawn finds you at the western gate, the diplomatic pouch now filled with Mari's response tablets secured with their royal seals. The waiting caravan resembles your arrival group. Merchants taking advantage of diplomatic escort for trade security, guards hired for the journey, animals laden with goods and provisions. The Mari military contingent, 8 mounted soldiers, under a mid-ranking officer, forms an honor guard that will separate once you reach the territorial boundary. As city walls recede behind you and the river road stretches ahead, You experience the familiar transition from court diplomat to traveler. Your formal robes are packed away, replaced by practical journey garments. Your mental focus shifts from nuanced policy interpretation to immediate concerns of route safety, weather conditions, and caravan dynamics. Yet the core of your mission, the successful transmission of words between powers, continues uninterrupted, merely changing form. The return journey proceeds without significant incident, a blessing in diplomatic travel where delays or disruptions can undermine carefully established momentum. Days blend together in the monotony of desert crossing, broken only by variations in terrain and the gradual transition from Mari's territorial influence to areas under Babylonian control. Throughout, the diplomatic pouch remains your constant concern, kept within sight during days' travel, beneath your head during sleep, its contents the physical embodiment of your professional purpose. On the 12th day, the familiar silhouette of Babylon appears on the horizon. The massive walls, the stepped profile of Etemenanke's ziggurat, dedicated to Marduk, the palace complex sprawling across its central mound. Despite having seen this view dozens of times returning from various missions, you feel the same quiet pride in belonging to this ancient center of civilization, this city whose name means Gate of the Gods. Your arrival follows established protocol, entry through the diplomat's gate rather than merchant entrances, brief credential verification by border officials who recognize you personally from years of service, direct escort to the foreign ministry complex, where your immediate report will be received. The familiar progression from public streets to government quarter to inner administrative chambers marks your transition back from traveler to court functionary. In the foreign minister's audience chamber, you present the sealed diplomatic case with appropriate ceremony. The tablets are carefully extracted, examined for intact seals, then read with close attention. Your verbal report supplements the written exchange. Observations about Mari officials' apparent sincerity, assessment of internal support for the agreement, details of unstated concerns revealed during informal discussions. The minister, a career diplomat named Marduk Nasir who has supervised your service for nearly a decade, listens with practiced attention, asking precise questions that extract maximum value from your observations. His response reveals satisfaction with the outcome. This provides workable foundation for formal treaty. The king will be pleased with both the substance and your handling of negotiations. The audience concludes with discussion of immediate next steps, preparation of formal response, scheduling of technical consultations, planning for eventual treaty ceremony. As diplomatic process shifts from negotiation to implementation, your direct involvement will diminish, though you may be called upon for clarification or future follow-up missions. Released from immediate duty, you return to your Babylon residence. A modest but comfortable home in the quarter traditionally occupied by scribes and other educated professionals. The familiar surroundings, your personal library of tablets, furniture arranged to your preference, the small shrine to Nabu, patron deity of writers, in the corner, welcome you back to fixed identity after weeks of diplomatic fluid self. The established pattern of return unfolds. First a proper bath with hot water and fine soap to remove the last traces of journey dust, then changing into personal rather than official garments. then a quiet meal of favorite foods, unavailable during travel. Only after these restorative rituals do you visit the Temple of Nabu to offer thanks for safe completion, and the Foreign Ministry archives to file your detailed mission report. In the archives, a vast repository of diplomatic correspondence spanning centuries, you find your regular workspace preserved as you left it. The chief archivist greets you with professional warmth. Another successful journey, I hear. The water rights matter progresses toward resolution. His casual mention of mission specifics reminds you of returning to a place where diplomatic discretion operates differently. Here, among fellow specialists, certain discussions can occur that would be unthinkable in public contexts. You spend several hours completing your formal report, a detailed account of the mission from departure to return, including all official exchanges, noteworthy unofficial conversations, observations about Mari's current conditions, and assessment of factors that might influence future relations. This document will join thousands of others forming the institutional memory of Babylonian diplomacy, available to future representatives who must understand the full history of interstate relationships. 3 days later, having fully re-established your Babylon routines, you receive summons to the palace. These periodic royal audiences, usually following significant missions, allow the king to receive direct impressions untilted through ministerial interpretation. Though formally structured, they typically involve more candid exchange than possible through official channels. The palace complex, far more extensive than Mari's, though similar in basic organization, represents the concentrated power and wealth of an imperial capital. Moving through its successive courtyards and ceremonial spaces, you note subtle changes implemented during your absence. New guard rotation patterns, recently completed decoration in the audience antechamber, the presence of envoys from distant Eastern kingdoms suggesting expanding diplomatic horizons. The king receives you in his administrative study rather than formal throne room, a space designed for working governance rather than ceremonial impression. Here, maps cover walls, reference tablets fill shelves, and a large work table dominates the center. The setting emphasizes practical statecraft over royal mystique. Shamash Nasir returns safely once again. The king observes as you complete the formal prostration. Your consistent success in these journeys suggests either remarkable diplomatic skill or unusual fondness for desert discomfort. The mild humor, rare in royal address, indicates private rather than public interaction. Mode. The former sustains me through the latter, divine majesty. You respond with appropriate deference, balanced with the directness expected in these settings. The substantive discussion proceeds with unusual depth, not just reviewing the specific water rights agreement, but exploring broader implications for Babylon-Mari relations within the complex regional power balance. The king demonstrates characteristic strategic vision, placing this single agreement within larger patterns of alliance, resource management, and potential military scenarios. Mari's acceptance of alternating access principles may indicate willingness for similar arrangements regarding trade routes, he observes at one point. Your assessment of their irrigation minister's influence could prove useful for approaching that possibility. Throughout the audience, you provide the perspective unique to diplomatic scribes who move between capitals, insights into personality factors affecting policy, cultural influences on negotiation style, unstated motivations revealed through indirect means. This human intelligence complements the factual reporting that flows through official channels, adding dimensional understanding to diplomatic calculation. As the audience concludes, the king presents an unexpected directive. You will remain in Babylon for the treaty formalization rather than undertaking another mission immediately. Your familiarity with negotiation context will prove valuable during final drafting. This represents recognition of your contribution beyond mere message carrying, acknowledgement of the interpretive and analytical skills developed through years of diplomatic service. The following weeks bring a welcome respite from travel while engaging your specialized knowledge. Working with legal scribes and water management experts, you help translate the general agreement into precise treaty language that will govern this aspect of interstate relations for years to come. Your particular contribution involves ensuring that technical terminology maintains consistent meaning across the different dialectical contexts of Babylon and Mari, a subtle but crucial aspect of creating durable agreement. During this period in the capital, you reconnect with the networks that sustain you between journeys, fellow scribes who share professional challenges, temple colleagues who maintain spiritual traditions, family connections that ground you in ordinary life. These relationships, necessarily interrupted during diplomatic missions, provide the continuity and personal identity often challenged by your representative role abroad. You particularly value evening gatherings at the house of an elderly astronomy scribe named Eranaid, where conversation ranges freely across intellectual domains rarely combined in official contexts. Here, discussions of celestial observations blend with literary analysis, mathematical problems with theological questions. These interdisciplinary exchanges nourish aspects of your mind necessarily constrained within diplomatic specialization. At one such gathering, conversation turns to the nature of your unusual profession. You exist between worlds, observes a temple philosopher, neither fully present in any capital nor entirely absent. How does this affect your sense of belonging? The question prompts deeper reflection than typical social exchange. The diplomatic scribe serves as bridge between separated powers. You respond after consideration. We carry not just words but understanding across divisions of distance, language and interest. Perhaps belonging fully anywhere would compromise this function. Yet bridges themselves must be anchored firmly at both ends to function, counters an architectural scribe. Where are your anchors? You gesture to the gathering itself, this community of knowledge keepers representing Babylon's intellectual tradition. Here, in the continuity of written wisdom that transcends any single kingdom or reign, the words we preserve and transmit outlast the powers they momentarily serve. 2 months after your return from Mari, the formalized treaty nears completion. Carefully crafted tablets detail water allocation schedules, monitoring procedures, dispute resolution mechanisms, and implementation timelines. The document represents not just agreement on a specific resource issue, but evolution in interstate relations, moving from power-based assertion to principle-based cooperation in at least this limited domain. As treaty finalization approaches, you receive new diplomatic assignment, not immediate but scheduled following the formal ceremony. You will journey northeast to Assur, capital of the rising Assyrian power. carrying official notification of the water agreement, diplomatic courtesy requiring informing other regional powers of significant bilateral arrangements, and conducting preliminary discussions on potential trade route coordination. The pattern continues. Another journey, another court, another carefully crafted exchange of words between powers. The physical challenges remain constant. Dusty roads, uncertain security, uncomfortable accommodations. The diplomatic challenges evolve with shifting regional dynamics, emerging rulers, changing alliance patterns. Through it all, you serve as living connection between separated centers of power, your mind and stylus creating bridges of understanding across geographic and political divides. On the evening before the Mari Treaty ceremony, an elaborate public event that will include sacrifices to gods, formal document presentation, and celebratory feasting, you stand on your home's roof terrace, gazing toward the ziggurat of Nabu, where the treaty tablets will be formally deposited for divine protection. The massive stepped structure, illuminated by the setting sun, represents the permanence that written agreements aspire to achieve in an impermanent world. You reflect on the journey, both the specific diplomatic mission to Mari and the longer, professional path that has made you a trusted carrier of words between kingdoms. From temple apprentice laboriously forming first cuneiform signs, to court scribe recording royal pronouncements, to diplomatic representative whose interpretation shapes interstate relations, your life has been defined by the transformation of ephemeral speech into enduring text. In a week, you will again depart Babylon's walls, facing familiar discomforts and dangers to deliver new words to different rulers. The cycle has defined your adult life, alternating between cosmopolitan capitals and desolate travel routes, between courtly protocol and survival practicality, between representing others and reclaiming personal identity. The diplomatic scribe exists in these transitions, belonging not fully to any single place, but to the essential space between powers where understanding must be continuously reconstructed. As darkness falls, you descend to your writing desk, where preparations for the Assyrian mission await. Tomorrow belongs to public ceremony and formal roles. Tonight offers quiet opportunity to continue what has always been your truest function, carefully arranging marks on clay that bridge the gaps between separate worlds. Thank you for spending this quiet time with us, drifting through forgotten echoes of history. If this story brought you peace, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs rest. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well, dream softly, and good night.